I'm going to start off tonight with Sprinless's game, and he's playing black, and I was just going to run through it really quickly, um, just to see the position. But we're starting off with Sprinless, and then I think we're going to go probably 7 full games tonight. Yeah, no, thank you all very much for being here, and we'll take a look. Awesome. So looks like basically I don't know what you would call this. I guess the semi-Slav, semi-Slav with this early trade on d5. Some Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, cool. Let's keep going on this. This line is pretty good for black. One of the main problems in semi-Slav, one of the main problems in Queen's Gambit declined is issues with the white squared black bishop. In this particular case, with the exchange variation and the pawn being traded off, e takes d5. Basically, black's in a pretty good place. I mean, there's not really, there's not really much in terms of, white ability to, stop black's development. All of his minor pieces are developed. Knight can play to b6, knight can play to c4, and then, black's basically in a pretty good situation here. Continuing forward on this, I think basically, I think black's gonna be okay. This game slips basically towards black's positive eval. Let's go back a little bit, though. I want to see exactly where this trade turns into a positive eval for black. I think basically it starts somewhere around here. Basically right after the trade. This general c4 takes d5, e takes d5 provides that open bishop line and basically allows black to have the better minor pieces. So solid opening. So, it's always good when white plays into this Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation. I don't think there's that many lines that end up with a positive eval for white there. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid position. Basically playable for black. White's initiative has been stopped, and I think you can just sort of start pushing on both the center and on the on the king side here as black. You have control over the e-file. You have a semi-open file for the rook on e8. The threats basically knight h3, knight to e4, and basically here I think black's just kind of smooth sailing. I don't know. I mean, the bishop looks a bit overextended on e5. A knight more naturally goes on that outpost. This diagonal is not really worth a particularly large amount, so bishop to f4 seems like a better idea. In terms of advancing this plan for black, I think you basically have the bishop pair, so that's helpful. And I think maybe c5. It looks like the d4 pawn is pinned, so I'm wondering maybe maybe some threats to do with c5. Hey, good evening, Jack. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, so I think basically this is this is going to be pretty interesting. In terms of improvements for black, I think basically white sort of helps out black by playing this variation. Even here, this is basically equalized. Black has a solid position. Hey Smiggy, welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here. So I guess I just want to look at this opening kind of as from a big picture perspective. One of the main problems with the semi-Slav is the light squared bishop for black having a basically poor development. So giving black this open bishop, I think, almost immediately leads towards equality. I want to play this. Engine line just to see a position in which white actually has an advantage. But I'm pretty sure this deteriorates pretty quickly. Black's minor pieces are solid here. This bishop is going to develop to f5 or g4, and black will have a kind of a very straightforward route to development with a solid pawn structure with d5, c6, and b7. Generally just a good place for black to be in. In terms of pushing this forward, what does black do here? Black has secured equality. I think the route is probably just to advance on the king side. I think on the queen side, white's counterplay is going to be pretty limited. I mean, this c6 pawn is solid. you know, pushes like b4, b5 are just met with kind of not playing anything back, just you know, waiting for pawn takes c6, then waiting for pawn takes c6 and being good. But I think here, you know, you're in pretty good shape. Black, you know, Black's going to continue to use his minor pieces and his better control of the center, which, you know, I think I would characterize Black as having a better control of the center here. You know, this technically White has an extra center pawn, but, you know, considering that it's on e2, it doesn't really, not really doing anything at the moment. c6 supports d5. And White and Black's white squares are actually very strong here. There's not really much of an opportunity for White to you know, advance, or not really much of an opportunity for White to advance in on the center here. e4 is probably unplayable. Black could just meet it with pawn takes and have an open file on the d pawn. But but the minor pieces for Black here, I think, are just generally pretty solid. You know, smooth sailing, almost a one pawn advantage for Black in the middle game. So overall, better, you know, great play by Sprinless on you know, coming out of the opening. You know, it was helpful that White played this pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5 variation. I think that's always going to lead towards you know, good pawns, good general positioning for Black. But good job. You know, it's always good with Black if you can come out of the opening up a pawn. This continues to go in Black's direction. I just want to see where the slip on the eval is, but I don't know. I mean, I guess here, you know, the engine really doesn't like e3. The reason why it doesn't like e3 is because it limits this queen's mobility. There's not really any direct threat there, but it's, you know, it basically intentionally limits the mobility of the queen. It also limits the mobility of this e4 pawn, so I guess it makes sense, you know, in context, basically eliminate all the, you know, the potential discovered checks from e4 here. But overall, e3 and e3 basically, you know, limits the ability of White to make any kind of threats on the king side. I'm almost tempted as Black to start playing stuff like bishop takes h4, queen takes h4. I think that's probably too ambitious, but you know, the attack can start on yeah, no, totally tactics. Yeah, totally. I'm getting ready for bishop takes h4 at some point. You know, other things there like rook a8 or rook a6 maybe, and then with rook g6 in mind, or rook e6 with rook g6 in mind. But I think Black can start comfortably attacking on the king side. Overall, just Black is much better here without much of a material lead. But a positional lead where White can't really advance at all on the queen side and is pretty much cut out of the king side. So overall, you know, Black really is in a good place positionally. In this position, I think you have a pretty good pre-made attack. And then one other quick thing. Bishop takes h4 can be met with if pawn takes, rook takes d5. And then there, you know, Black basically has a pin on the queen, but it gets his rook very efficiently into this attacking situation. So that's pretty good. So that's a benefit for Black there. But here, you know, I think you really just have a pre-made attack. You know, I think Sprinless we'll take a look at the rest of the game, but I think moves like bishop takes h4, rook takes e5, and just getting your pieces into the white king side looks very promising for you. f6, bishop f4, and I think overall this is pretty good for Black. Yes, definitely some good tactics. This pin in particular I really like. Right here, I like bishop takes h4 here. This could get met, I guess, by bishop takes g7, but then you've broken open the king side and equalized, and the material equalizes anyways, so you just get the two pawns. But I really like bishop takes h4 because exploiting this pin as Black is very valuable. Both because I mean, I assume White won't take when rook. So bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes e5, and I assume White's not going to play pawn takes e5. But rook h5 can be played on the next move, and then supported by queen takes h4. This looks pretty crushing for Black, to be honest. Yeah, some cool tactics here. So far, I think Sprinless has played a great game. I know that there's a rapid change in eval coming, but great game played so far. You've really given yourself a good tactical position out of relatively small opening advantage. So overall, excellent. Good job. Um, Queen h7, I think, is playable. Queen h7 trades into an equal pawn endgame. That's a little tricky. I understand the reasons for not doing that. In my eyes, this pawn structure is not necessary. Black's pawn structure is not necessarily much better than White's pawn structure, so I understand not trading the queen off. Let's take a look just at the engine line. Queen takes, king takes, king g1. Yeah, no. This guy played really well, to be honest. This guy's yeah, no. This Sprintless played a great game here. Welcome, FIFA boy. I hope you're doing well, and I hope your studies are going well as they're wrapping up. But yeah, so cool. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Smiggy. I'll put that one in for that's in for May 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I'll add it to my list now. Cool. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sending it, Smiggy. But yeah, good to hear. Good to hear, FIFA boy. Cool. So here, this opening, this opening may not be, it may be book and it may be considered to be okay for White, but from a fundamental perspective, I think this opening gives Black an advantage almost immediately. This bishop developing to f5 versus g4, I think really is a big deal. I think it's a big improvement. And if you continue on with that, you're going to have better minor pieces. As this game continues, I think you execute really well tactically. This bishop takes f(h4) is an opportunity, but f6 also leads to a big kind of positive eval, and everything's going smoothly. And then we get to this queen and pawn endgame. So I wanted to slow down here. If we play through this line. This is sort of crazy. Okay, I was just assuming queen takes h7 here. So let's go from there. Black gets a very positive eval, but I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be that strong for. I don't know exactly how Black breaks through this pawn situation. This, to my eyes, is not super identifiable as a better king and pawn endgame. But I'm gonna keep looking, and should be interesting at least. b5, king g5, king e6. Yeah. I guess maybe this king gets in. I'm counting the moves, so it's White to move here. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. 4, 4, and then basically, Black does queen first. So I guess that's a little bit better for Black. Makes sense. Yeah, it's an improvement. But let's take a look at what happens here with the queens not getting traded off. This is a much more favorable even pawn endgame than the previous one. Yeah, here this is just Black very cleanly winning this endgame. In many ways, the queen taking on h7 was trading. Basically, trading the queens on h7 was much more complicated. I didn't know exactly how this would go, but king h2, king h6. Black ends up getting the better of this. Basically, he can march his king in to take b2 and take these pawns before the king can get in to take the b7 and c6 pawns. He's just too many moves ahead, Black. Black's king is just much more active than White's. So I guess that's the improvement. In terms of other things in this game, I think it was an excellently played game. I think really a lot of good positional play, especially in the opening. You knew intuitively to get all the pieces, all the minor pieces developed, which is important. And capitalized on the fact that you had a good bishop relative to the normal Queen's Gambit declined semi-Slav situations. But yeah, excellent. Good playing, Sprintless. Improvements here. I think. I'm gonna just look at a few different things, but I think they're all pretty minor. I liked this bishop takes h4. This bishop takes h4 tactic. I don't know if that's. I guess maybe that's not even objectively better. I'll go through. Let's look. I mean, I think we really did play a very strong, accurate game, but I yeah. Bishop h4 is a tactic that I wanted to play, but it might not be a tactic that the engine wanted to play. Bishop takes g3 seems a little bit unnecessary. I see that you're trying to break open the king side. I think that's good, but I think you should probably go a bit slower here. Bishop takes g3. You know, I think that you can do better than that. Basically, king to h7, rook to g8, and assembling with more of the pieces is probably better before you exchange. I like pawn takes h4 even. I think pawn takes h4 is kind of cool because the bishop can't retake the pawn. This basically forces either a trade of the bishop or a doubling. I think I think basically pawn takes h4 is kind of a better tactic. The bishop is pinned. This does open up your king side more to attack, but I figure your king side's going to get pretty opened up to attack anyways, and you're going to be okay with it because it's going to be an open line on white's king as well. So I guess I would recommend pawn takes h4 over bishop takes g3, but you are up a lot. I mean, you're in a good place here. I mean, especially given the context of you're playing pawn takes h4 on the next move anyways, right? If you're comfortable, if you're not comfortable playing pawn takes h4, then that's one thing, but seeing it, like, you're basically cool playing it on the next move, so you might as well play it on the move before where it's just a free pawn for you, and you also don't fix white's pawn structure. So pawn takes h4 I think is the play. Pawn takes h4, bishop takes, queen takes, and then king h7. And you're in a pretty good place. I think basically black is playing well here, and you've earned a 2.5 point pawn lead, and it's really just about closing out the game. In terms of making this continue, I think queen h6, queen h7 is probably the move that I would play. But even though it's not super, it would take a lot of calculation to realize this, and you'd have to, in a slow game, you would spend a lot of time counting out the king moves. Black is really much better in this endgame because he can access these pawns much more quickly than white can access black's pawns. These pawns will end up passing, and then black will win. That's really not vulnerable. That's not really noticeable, like, unless you really look at it. But you see it much more clearly here, where white volunteers for the trade. Here, it's really just killing pawn endgame. But overall, great game. The only improvement that I was really looking at was pawn takes h4. I can take a look at the engine analysis and see if there's maybe a larger one, but overall here, really solid. White gave you some opportunities as well. Like, I think that general opening is probably pretty bad for white. Letting black free his light squared bishop is really is really something that benefits black. It's one of the main weaknesses, main thematic weaknesses of these queen decline positions, Slav, semi-Slav, all that stuff. This is the one tactical improvement that I see versus the game. But again, it's sort of nitpicking because you're already up 2 pawns. And also queen d6 here. Queen d6 keeps the queen out from g4. I think it's better to defend against this. I think it's better to defend against the oncoming threats from white into the king side. I mean, basically, black's king safety is somewhat better than white's. Not much better, but a little bit better than white's. So the engine is recommending pawn takes g3. That looks extremely aggressive. Probably, that it would be pawn takes g3 immediately with the rook on g1 is a pretty brave move to play. But I think that you do want to maintain the control over the g4 square. I'd play like king g7 or king h7 and then rook g8, challenging for this file. I'm pretty sure black will win the fight over this file. But overall, very solid game. But allowing this, allowing the queen to come to g4 and then check the, basically check the king and check the h4 pawn is a little bit of a misguided idea. But overall, excellent. Very solid game. I thought it was really pretty accurate. Yeah, 96.2, awesome. Right where you want to be. And yeah, good stuff. Not many opportunities for white. I'm surprised that white got such a good accuracy score, to be honest. I mean, I guess I would just say I really don't like that Queen Gambit's declined exchange variation. I feel like that's just an error. Letting your e pawn take the d pawn and free all of your pieces, free all of black's pieces when you don't have to. That seems intuitively wrong to me, but overall, awesome game, really cool. And things looking very good. Good playing by black. And thank you very much for sending that game. Thank you. Thanks Sprinless for sending the game. Really interesting stuff. And no, I see the improvement on pawn takes h4 from a tactical perspective, but overall, I think strategically you were in the right place. I mean, you developed all your minor pieces quickly. You attacked on the king side. You weren't overly cautious. I mean, that was a good benefit, and you allowed yourself to attack the king side even after you had castled. And I think overall, from a strategic perspective, this makes a lot of sense. So really, good game, and pawn takes h4 is a little better, and not playing queen d6 is a little better because of the g4 check. But overall, good game, good playing. Thank you very much for sending it here. That was a really interesting game. Thanks for that. All right, on to the next one. Here's another one from Zipcag, Zipcag2. We'll take a look. Just need to load it. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I assume that that's an acceptable opening. I'll just slow down and go back for a second just because I want to see it. This opening move, pawn takes d5. This is in book, but I can see here that it's a pretty distant third choice. The d4 is by far the most common move here. C takes d5 is way down the list. 275 games out of 55,000. That's pretty much that's pretty far down in the opening book. Yeah, sure. Here, let me. I'll follow you here. Interesting. But yeah, no, totally. Here, I got a second. I do. Thank you very much for following the stream, and you're followed. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Julio. Thank you for following and for sending material for my stream as well. Cool. Yeah. So here's a Benoni game. Sorry, I just want to get my chat back to normal. But yeah, this is Zipcag's game. And I will pull this up. Cool. So there's another one that was sent as a study. It's funny, these studies are tricky to do. Okay. Well, it's fine. Ran into the same problem this morning. Should have checked this one as well. Okay, but here it's a Benoni game. Zipcag is playing white, and I'll pull it up on an analysis board. Here we go. Or sorry, Zipcag is playing black. So let's flip this. And Zipcag plays the Benoni. We haven't studied the Benoni that much. Benoni is an interesting opening. Yeah, I think here, it's basically kind of an interesting position. Rarely does white take the c5 pawn. It's almost always d5. I don't know the refutation for pawn takes c5, but queen take e5 looks pretty good. I never played the Benoni as black, so I don't really know it, but queen to a5 looks like a pretty good solution. E6 is also an idea, retaking with the bishop, and then if white plays b4, then undermining it with a5, I assume. But yeah, Benoni is an interesting opening. Gives white a big spatial advantage with d5, e4, and c4. But overall, you know, it shouldn't be. It ends up leading to a closed position that I think you know, white should be able to get a good advantage from. So, anyways, Weird. There's something trippy going on with my Twitch studio. Hmm. Weird. Oh, okay, there you go. Sorry about that. Sorry for that. Cool. Yeah, no, totally. Sorry about that, guys. I opened up Julio's thing and it tripped out my Twitch studio. But thank you guys for being patient. Yeah. So e6 I think is pretty good against the Benoni. I like it. I think that's the right way to play it. I'm just looking at this. No, sorry about that. I had there was some glitch on my computer, but it's fine now. Yeah, so c5 is rarely met with pawn takes c5. I mean, if we're looking at the commonness of these openings, d5 is much more common than d takes c5. Here d5, I would say d6 maybe, but overall, you know, black should be pretty solid here. D6 I like, knight f6 I like, but you know, basically it leads to a closed center and good chances for black. Continuing on with this game, d4, c5, d5, d6, okay, cool. D6 I think is the main line, right? D6 is one of the main lines. E5 I'm surprised is the most common move, but I think of d6 as being the main line here, and that's. But it looks like white has about 6 choices that are playable. d6, knight c3, knight f6, c takes, e4, g6, bishop b5, knight d7, knight f3, a6, bishop takes, oh wait, sorry about this, knight d7, knight f3, oh sorry, not bishop g5, bishop b5, sorry about that, jeez, bishop b5, knight d7, knight f3, a6, bishop takes d7, bishop takes, castles, knight e8, bishop, oh man, bishop takes d7, castles, bishop g7, h3, castles, a4, b5, a takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes, queen e2. Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem, Zipcag. It's my error. I should be checking those. But yeah, anyways, this is an interesting opening. This is a more open Benoni position than normal. Basically, black's development with the pawns along c5 and b5 are really solid. I think queen a5 might be a good idea. I think b4 could be a good idea. But basically, black's going to have really good play on the non-king side if he wants. I think there might be some threats along like Queen A1 that could potentially be good. B5 could B4 puts the knight to somewhere awkward. On B4 here, I think the knight has to go to either D1 or B1. But yeah, that is interesting. And I guess B4 here does cause the knight to be sort of dislocated. I think Queen A5 is probably the next way to go, but overall, I would go with this. This looks solid for black. So yeah, say Queen E2, B4, Queen E2, B4, which I think is probably best for black. Knight D2, Queen B7, Rook E1, Bishop B5. Sorry, Rook E1, Bishop E5, Queen E3, Knight D7, B3, D8. Overall, interesting position. I mean, it looks like black's getting pretty good attacking, pretty good mobility along the queen side. I'm wondering if the rook should be on C8 to support threats on the C file. But we'll take a look. We'll circle back on that on a second. C8 as opposed to E8 here. I sort of wonder. Rook's mobility is a little bit limited there. Maybe Rook E5 wasn't the right idea. I think probably just the conservative Rook E8 was the best play. Rook E5 is met too easily by F4. Rook E8. 5, H6, knight takes, king takes, E6, king G7, and I assume that does time run out here, or is sorry, I just want to make sure this is the full. Okay, gotcha for sure. Yeah, no, totally awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for sending it, Zipkaga. Sorry, I'm slow. I'm slow about this. But yeah. I like black's position here. Yeah, I think black's doing just fine, for sure. You know, you're up a piece. The e6 pawn is dangerous. I think you can play like knight f6 and queen e7 is probably the best strategy. Or maybe knight. I don't know. I have to look at this for a second because this isn't as obvious as I think it is. It's I think queen c6 maybe. And then bishop takes c6, and then the pawn can never really take the d7 knight because of the rook takes e1 threat. If you can trade off the queens, I think this is going to end up being good for black. I'm thinking like queen c6 could be the right idea, but queen c6 and then pressure on the e6 pawn. So queen c6, and then you're fine with trading. I guess it's white to move. So you know, we'd have to see what white does next. But I don't think that pawn takes d7 is ever completely playable here. Basically, I think this ends up being sure. Yeah, no problem. Let me. Oh right. Okay. Yeah, I was looking at. You're absolutely right about that. Sorry. Knight g5. Rook e5, f4, rook e7. G3, D5. Oh, sorry about this. Man. Queen D6, Rook E5, F4. Rook E8. E5, H6, Knight takes, King takes, E6, King G7. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, Zipcag. Thank you for being patient. It's my fault. But yeah, so here, yeah, so I think the position is still sort of similar here. Yeah, I'm thinking like, I mean, Queen C6 is what you want to play. You want to get the queen off the board. You are not immediately getting threatened. I'm going to guess, did he play King F2 next move? That would be probably what I would expect in this situation. I don't know what else sort of advances White's situation here. King F2 is super helpful because it defends the rook and it prevents Queen takes D7 from being, or Pawn takes, it makes Pawn takes D7 playable again, King F2. So, going on this, D4, Pawn takes C5, E6. The game went D5, and yep, Bishop G5, Bishop E5. Okay, interesting. So looking at this situation, what are the good, what are the good characteristics of the position? What are the bad characteristics of the position? I'm going to take this from like the early middle game, and see. So here I think you're in book. This is basically modern, standard Benoni. Bishop B5, Knight D7, and Knight F3, A6, Bishop takes, Bishop takes. Standard Benoni. Black is going to end up with a big queen side. Moves like B5, B4 are going to be good for black. White's probably going to try to expand in the center. I think maybe Bishop F4 and then E5 could be the main strategy for White. But overall here, I think black has very solid control of the queen side. I think this queen side advantage is basically, what black is playing for in this game. So white, basically is focused towards the center. I think there aren't really that many great breaks for E5 is interesting. Yeah. So in I mean, the first thing I think is not going to be too surprising, but I think that Rook E5 is not the way to go with the rook. I think that Rook E8 is an improvement. Rook E5 like facilitates F4, and basically means F4 is a move that advances White's goals here. White's goals of basically passing the pawn on E5 and creating problems for black in the center. It continues on, but black is still fine, basically, right? Or, sorry, this is the line. This is the sideline. Rook F1, Rook E8, but black is actually still fine. I mean, if we're looking at the eval's up, minus 1.6. I think basically black is playing well and in a good situation. I'm guessing white plays King F2. The engine is advocating F5, but King F2 is pretty sacrificed. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Queen C6 is actually great if you Queen C6 here is actually really good if you if white doesn't play King F2. If white plays King F2, then Queen C6 doesn't really trap the queen in the same way. But yeah, Queen C6 looks good. Um, yep, makes sense. So yeah, so let's look at this. I want to go through. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I just want to go through piece by piece and see if there's any improvements. In terms of strategy, I think you're doing the correct things. I think basically the expansion on the queen side is correct. A6, B5 is definitely good. Um, uh, White, I think, probably doesn't want to. I think bishop takes d7 is not the right idea. I would probably play bishop to d3 here. Bishop takes d7, trades off white's good squared bishop for a knight, for one of your knights. It's a closed position, so it doesn't really. It's a closed position, so it doesn't really. The difference isn't as great as in a more open position where the bishop would be way better. But I still think that that White's going to have to, sort of play from behind with that that bishop having taken d7 too early, giving Black the bishop pair, especially this dark squared bishop, which is going to have a long diagonal, is a little bit rough for Black. Yeah, rook e1, e5. That probably is White's best long-term strategy, Zipcag. I do think that that's a good idea. I think that probably, e5 may need to be supported by bishop f4 too. Like rook e1, bishop g7, e5, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's fine. But I don't know. I mean, the more open the situation gets, the better it gets for you. So moves like e5 makes sense. I mean, it is definitely an aggressive play for White. But if you trade off the center, if you trade off like the e4 pawn, Black's going to get more active with his bishops. So like something like bishop f5 could be a response there. Basically your dark squared bishop is facing directly towards that e5 pawn. But I understand the point. For sure. I mean, I think that's where White's best chance at play is in the center and with advancing these pawns. So things like bishop f4, e5, knight takes e5, and then pushing as hard as he can in the center. I don't think that the advancements are going to be on the king side. They could be, but what's really obvious, or what's the most clear in terms of advantages for either side, is your queen side is looking great now. These pawns are so extended that basically they're not part of this this flank attack. B5, B4 is really solid, and I think that's going to hold up pretty well. H3 castles, A4, and here I think basically Black has complete control of the queen side. This makes a lot of sense. I understand why Black is up here. There's still ideas with rook e1, e5 like you were talking about, and I still think that's probably White's best chance, but White's really kind of playing in a difficult situation. Things like maybe, I don't know, like queen d3 could potentially work, but White needs to clear out this queen side, and he doesn't really have great resources to do it. Bishop e3 could be something, but it's just tough. I mean, this is just a big lasting positional advantage for Black. The engine suggests e5 immediately. So e5, knight takes e5. I think this is probably, yeah. I mean, this is a challenge for Black, but this queen side is still just really solid. Another thing about this is, I think maybe playing d takes e5 isn't the best move here, or I guess the engine says it is, so it probably is. All right. I guess I was thinking about maybe knight e8 and then pawn takes d6 just to keep all these pawns together. But I guess this pawn structure is also fine for Black. These two pawns aren't particularly vulnerable. You can just sort of play bishop e8. And you'll be in a pretty good place. In terms of moving forward with this, yeah, these advanced pawns, b4 is good. Bishop e8, but yeah, continuing. I think there's just not much. Yeah, I mean, I think Black's playing pretty solidly. E5 never really materializes as a big threat. In this, bishop e5, bishop d, or sorry, knight d7. Cool. Yeah, black can just sort of push his queenside pawns and be in a good place. I want to slow down here too, because this position, this position should be good for black. I think maybe trading was the wrong idea here. Knight d7 makes sense to me, but is not liked by the engine. Knight d7 is solid. I mean, it basically prevents this e5 push, as well as the fact that it can kind of be maneuvered to b6 and c4, and that'll be a good play for black. Just good general maneuvering with that knight, f6 to d7 to b6. That seems like a solid place to put the knight, c4. But yeah, I'm sort of curious, where does this sort of slip away? E6. Maybe here knight f6. I think trading off the bishops is probably not right. It is your good squared bishop, and white is matching you on this diagonal. But I think maybe something like knight f6 could be good, just to keep the bishops on the board. You have the bishop pair, so you're getting extra mileage of your bishop versus his bishop. I'm also wondering maybe knight e5. Could this work? No, it doesn't. It hangs that pawn. Okay. So f6. Yeah, you probably just want to keep the bishop on the board. I would hold on to the bishop pair. I also sort of wonder about rook e8 as a general move. I know this was played a while back, but rook e8 versus rook c8. I think rook c8 might be an improvement. With rook c8, you really have kind of a longer lasting kind of material advantage. Yeah, I think basically rook e8, has value in that it holds against one of white's most active files. But I think that rook c8 or I like rook a8 too, actually. But those give much more mobility to the rook. I mean, if the rook is on e8, then it really can't go anywhere until like e6, pawn takes. Could potentially become pretty valuable with trading off this e pawn. But if you place it right on a semi-open file like this, this looks like it could help black. Like c4, pawn takes b3, rook threats on c2. This makes sense to me as black. You could probably get the knight to c5. But in general, I think you're in pretty good place. Pretty good place here. I like rook c8. Hey, Kiro, how are you? How's it going? So yeah, so I'd say rook c8 or rook a8 over rook e8. Anyways, rook e8 is fine too, objectively. It's on the stream, or it's on the Discord. I could take a look. I don't think you're on it for tonight, Kira. It's in. So I just added this section like a day or two ago. It's this hashtag upcoming. No, for sure. Upcoming hype. Upcoming hyphen schedule. I'm gonna try to upload things to that Discord like 1 or 2 days in advance, and then I can just and then it can just be up there. And then if I forget anyone, they'll tell me, or in my personal server, the TED FF free chess lessons, free master chess lessons server. The one with the white the one with the white chess piece. Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so I'm gonna start doing that, and I'll put the schedule up there on advance. Hopefully that'll be helpful. Um, Rook takes, Rook e7, and then Queen d6. But I'm sort of surprised that the eval shifts so much, to be honest. I feel like everything is going really well for black here before the bishop gets trade off. And then once the bishop gets traded off, bishop b2, knight f6. It's sort of tricky, though. Like, what else? You know, f6 and knight f6 do look sort of awkward facing off against that bishop. I guess maybe f6. I guess I could understand f6. One of the benefits of f6 is that it basically holds this e5 square. Then you can with f6 you can basically play knight to e5 and be okay. f6 does temporarily limit your bishop's mobility, but it gives you such a good outpost, like this knight e5 square. You might also be able to play e5 after this, and then comfortably play rook takes e6 after the en passant. Then you could get pressure on the e4 pawn. So I'm thinking like here f6, and then say like queen d2, and then maybe I don't know. Here I would probably, you know, queen d2 is the engine move, so it was better than what would be actually played. But say like g4 or something like that. Then I would play like e5 or e6, and I feel like this would be pretty good for black. He'd probably en passant you'd play that, and then you'd have the potential for threats on e4. That's one possible way that I think that this could be continued. But I'm still. I mean, basically, with the rook being played to e8, I think you should try to make it more mobile. This is a good way, actually. This is just fine. Getting your rook more mobile like that, by opening the e file with e6. This makes sense. But I'm still sort of curious. I don't understand where this slips so much towards white. I guess d3. I guess d5 does open the situation. That does sort of make sense. This pawn needs to be defended, but if you play d5, I think the situation gets too open for white, and queen to d6 has got to be objectively white's best move. This must be best. So here, like d5, and then how should white respond? With queen d6, I don't know. I like queen d6. I mean, I like the threat that it gives that rook, and I like the threat that it adds to this e5 or this d5 pawn. Knight e3. Okay, sure. Interesting. But yeah, I think you know, considering that you've now committed your rook to e8 as opposed to c8 or a8, opening the file is important. You're getting relatively open files on the other files, so e6 I think really is right. I don't know if you want to trade off the bishops there. Probably you don't. But I'm not sure it's worth. I mean, abstractly, you don't want to trade off the bishops, but but you might want. But I don't know if it's worth playing a move to prevent trading off the bishops. I like e6, and I like rook takes e6 as a general move with space along the e file. This looks good. I am surprised. I guess I don't know. You know, what is the engine recommending? H6, queen takes d6, pawn takes g5. This is just sort of a weird line. Too many hanging things. I wouldn't have played it that way. The way that the engine plays. D5 does loosen the position, but it sort of makes sense. Good question, Spared Penguin. Let me take a look. It's in a few games. Do you mind sending that game over again, Spared Penguin? Can you just like send the link? Because it's the one that got corrupted, so I just want to make sure that I have the link. Okay. Anyways, on this game, d5 I think is basically, I think d5 loosens the center in a way that it probably shouldn't be. Queen to d6, rook e5, f4. So rook e5 is definitely inefficient if you're just basically moving it back. Rook e8, and I think you're sort of, I think you're in trouble basically as black. Knight e3, and white will start sort of developing moves towards you. Here, yeah, f4 I think is better. Yeah, just send me the link, Spared Penguin. I'm pretty sure yours was the one, the link that was, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much for sending it over, and we'll look at it. Oh yes, sorry. Jeez. I'm sorry, I'm really off with my spreadsheet. Yes, your game is next. Thank you very much, Spared Penguin. Sorry about that. As soon as we're done with this game, we're on to the next one. But yes, we'll do yours next, Spared Penguin. It was in the schedule. I just had it labeled badly. I'm working this all out. Work in progress. But yeah, so d5, queen d6, and I think this is better. But I sort of want to see, you know, where can black maintain his edge here? Because here, you know, you're basically up half a pawn. I think that things are going very well for black. You know, the queen side is basically under your control here. And with this, I mean, it seems to move towards equal. I guess d5 is really the move. D5 just loosens this pawn structure up too much. You know, among other things, it makes e5, you know, it basically opens this diagonal and it takes away your potential for an outpost on e5. So yeah, so e6, knight to e5, I think that's probably a good idea. But the d6 to d5 I think was kind of misguided. Basically, you know, you want to play moves that keep white out of your position here. Things like queen c6, and you hold d6, and the queen never really gets in. With d5, best case scenario, you know, the queen is still getting into your position. If you want to, basically, you want to avoid that generally. If the queen is you know, if you can avoid letting the pieces onto your side, like 6th rank or further, you probably do, because those squares are the ones that are the most frequently dangerous to you as, you know, as black, basically. You know, if you're playing black, you don't want to let white pieces onto 6th rank or further. In this particular case, I don't know how terrible it is. This, you know, this is, I don't know. It's not that great. But the fact that this d6 pawn is still being left alone, and this you know, this center is not, basically d5 is causing some problem. D5 causes problems in the sense that it lets pieces in. With like queen c6 here, I think you know, knight e3, knight d5 is still a threat, but at least the piece doesn't get into queen d6. Yeah, right. Well, is it actually forced? I want to see the full thing here. So queen to d6, rook to e5. This definitely limits the queen's mobility. But maybe h6. So d5, queen d6, and then rook e8. Okay, you're right, after f4. Yeah, which is actually sort of interesting. So rook e5, f4 is it does really weaken that queen's mobility. You know, if you're white, you can play f5. So you know, that's something to consider, right? I mean, this basically regains the mobility. But f4 does restrict this queen's. You know, basically this queen is now only okay on this square. There's no other squares where it can go. You know, can't even take d5. So rook e5, I guess, is dealt with by rook f4, but that is more restrictive to white than I was thinking initially. h6, knight takes h7, king g7. Okay. Yeah. The engine is saying play h6 immediately. So like here even, queen d6, rook e8, and then on knight e3, h6. Here I don't think it's just trapped. You know, basically here the queen is not trapped, right? I mean, the queen can play queen takes d5, but it's still getting suggested as a general move. So here, like e takes d5, hx g5, knight f5, and then this wins that exchange. It goes into sort of some tactical sidelines, but I don't know. Overall, pretty solid, but I really do want to give, you know, I do want to see if there's places here where you can improve. Generally, I think this is a pretty well played game. Knight f3, bishop takes, cool, looks good. I'd play b5 here. Black is looking solid with an improved, and solid queen side. Moves like b4 I think are really good idea. And here, yeah, I would play rook a8. I think rook a8 or rook c or rook c8. Yep. So rook c8 and then c4 I think. So yeah, so this is the one move where I think I might have tried something differently. I think I would have played rook c8 here, and tried to open this file and make the rook more of a more of a attacking piece. White will probably play bishop b2. You can play c4, but in terms of a general plan, like, you know, I just think your rook gets restricted on e8, and it didn't really demonstrate any it didn't demonstrate that much value on e8 versus c8. So in terms of looking at this game, I think the plan is better for rook c8. Things like c4, pawn takes b3, that offers this rook much better mobility. I don't know if you can ever do things like avoid trading off the bishops because of rook c8. I think, the bishop is going to play to b2. You're going to play rook c8. The pawn's going to play to b3. You're going to play c4, and then bishop b2 maybe. I don't know if he can play c6, but White's going to try to trade off bishops here. But in general, I think an improvement is just the positional move of this rook to c8 as opposed to e8. This just looks generally better for black. There's more mobility here, and I think that this this was an improvement, at least from a strategic perspective. Pawn takes e6, rook takes, and then d5. D5 lets the queen into d6. Letting the queen into your territory is dangerous, but I don't know. I guess I would just say queen to c6 maybe could be good. h6 is what's getting suggested. I'm sort of wondering, h6, queen takes d6, what happens? Maybe knight to f6. Knight to f6, knight f3. This isn't so obviously better. I guess threats on d4 get to be pretty worthwhile, but how about like knight? Can you ever do like knight e5 here? Tricky. h6, queen takes d6, knight f6. Hey, welcome, Jen. Yeah, so knight f6, and I think basically this position's good. This plays out pretty solidly. White sort of disappears the attack. From a material perspective, black is losing. But should get the d4 pawn back, or should get the e4 pawn back here. So this is a tactic, right, that could have been helpful. This h6, queen takes d6, knight f6, and basically, you're attacking both the knight and the pawn at the same time. If the pawn plays to e5, I guess you play knight e8. and double attack the queen and knight. But yeah, this is a tactical improvement. So I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, it's basically a tactical improvement. If you'd really have to count this out. Knight f3 loses the queen, right? But overall, I think black probably benefits from not letting the queen in the first place. From a fundamental perspective, not letting the queen in is probably the best idea. Queen to c6, I think holding d6 makes sense. But the engine most prefers this h6 knight to f3 move, and then you can either defend d6, or I would play knight e5 maybe. This gives an outpost on d5, but it holds everything together. It's really just tactical play. I'm sort of I'm sort of struggling in the sense that like the tactical play here is what drives this position. But yeah, I would play queen to c6. I think queen to c6 or h6. These are ideas that I think are pretty good. H6 is getting recommended by the engine because on queen takes d6, knight f6, and you're gonna get the e4 pawn back, or if e5, knight e8. But that's a tactical improvement. So yeah, at the end of the day, I guess this just comes down to tactics again. It's kind of a bummer because I feel like I can't really do much value. I'm sort of just reiterating what the engine would already tell you. From a strategic perspective, I liked rook e8 or rook c8 over rook e8. That seemed to give your rook more mobility. But otherwise, I think pretty solidly played game. Bishop b5, knight d7. I wouldn't have traded off this bishop if I was white. I think black gets a great position here with this advanced with this advanced expansion on the queen side. I think this is all good thinking. And here I really would have played immediately, probably rook to c8. That's what I like the most here from a strategic perspective. Get get this open file, get your rook very mobile, and basically try to win using the c file and the pawn on b4. That's my strategic sense. That's my strategic play here. I think that's what I would have gone with over knight to d7, rook to e8. There's going to be some threats. White's going to try to trade off that fianchettoed bishop. I don't know if you should let him or whether you should spend time not letting him. But from a conceptual perspective, I would have played rook to c8 or rook to a8. Rook to c8 or rook to a8 here. Give your rook more mobility. So I think that's a better strategy. Here, there are tactical improvements, but it's sort of lame. I'm just sort of reading engine output and saying that it's good. I mean, there are improvements, there are tactical improvements, but the moves, the best continuation is one that's a very clearly tactical one, which is just h6 and ignore the d pawn completely, and then on queen takes, knight f6, and you're threatening, and then you can take the d4 pawn. That's just like an engine assisted tactical move. A great play, and definitely definitely something you'd want to see and play as black, but it's kind of lame because I can't really offer you much of an original improvement there. Anyways, this game continues on. I just want to go to the correct line. D5, queen d6, rook e5, which allows this sort of double-edged rook move. But you're already in a situation where there's almost equality here. Rook e8. Yeah. So queen d6, rook e5, f4. And basically, black is good in the situation where the game runs out. I mean, again, a tactical situation, but you're up a piece. White has chosen to play knight takes f7, king takes f7, and I think you should be good here. King g7, and the pawn can't even take d7 immediately, so you can save the knight. There's definitely a lot of pressure, definitely a lot of tactics, but I think black ends in a pretty good position in this situation. White probably I think white plays king to f2 on the next move. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But you can respond to that with knight f6. You basically just move the knight on the next move, and you're up a piece. Overall, very strong. Just not not much in the way of. Wow, is that right? 99.7. Jeez. Am I looking at this wrong? I don't know, whatever. I probably did it wrong. But here, yeah, I don't think that's right either, Zipcag. I think it's doing something unusual, and I don't. Yeah, no. You're totally right. It's just some weird thing that happened when I transcribed the thing. It's definitely not that good. Zipcag. Yeah, no, like this is a blunder. Yeah, Oh, it's because you know what it is, Zipcag? It's because I put in the moves myself, and the main line is something that didn't actually happen. Yeah, so d5, the improvement was h6, but here the only real advice I could give you, I think overall, black's looking great at this situation. Black's up 1.5, and here, this is the only move where I would make a difference in judgment. I would play either rook to c8 or rook to a8, probably rook to c8, and then be ready to play c4. Rook e8 is moving it. Rook e8 is a defensive maneuver on a pawn that's not being used for anything yet, and it opens into a closed file. So I think overall that's not the most optimal move for black. And then the only improvement here is this basically this tactical improvement, h6, which queen takes d6, knight f6, knight f3, knight takes d4. But that's a very compy improvement. In general, you probably wouldn't want to let the queen to d6, but I'm not sure you have a choice. I think what you did was fine and intuitive, so I don't know if there's much to add there. But overall, d5, queen d6, and black's in a good place. This looks good. Looks good for black. Honestly, you ended in a position where black is winning and in good shape. So how upset can you be, really? I don't know exactly what happened in time pressure, but I think you played a good game. The rook to a more mobile square is the only suggestion that I would make. Everything else sort of made sense in context. D5 makes sense. The improvement was something that I would have had difficulty finding without the engine. So I think, yeah, no, absolutely, Zipcag, and please send as many games as you like. I'm doing this, and I really enjoy doing this. So yeah, please keep sending stuff, and I'll keep looking at it. Thank you very much for participating and for sending material for the stream. I just really appreciate it, Zipcag, and I really appreciate you being here. Feel free to send more games if you'd like. Very interested in seeing them. Yeah, so here we're gonna go into a game from Shreyas versus St. Louis Chess. Here we go. Okay. Cool. So Shreyas is playing white. Yeah, no, it is really interesting. It was a really interesting game. So yeah, so white's playing here. This gambit, this is the Albin counter gambit. We've seen this a few times on the stream, and it is interesting for sure. It basically is Queen's Gambit declined, and then Black immediately does his kind of equalizing break with E5. E5 is often a move that Black wants to play in the Queen's Gambit declined, so Albin just does that immediately. In terms of moving this opening, queen there, bishop e3, castles c3. Cool. And I think basically here, what do you, what can white do here? I guess main strategies probably involve just generally improving the pieces. Yeah, English theory, no problem at all. Yeah, we're doing English theory next. There's also one other game from Vertwitch that's going to be at the end of the stream. But yeah, no, English is in the next slot. This Shreyas game is interesting though. I want to go over the Albin counter gambit general lines. Basically what does white play against the Albin counter gambit? Most common is d takes e5, then d4. This is the line that I know. This is basically, a line in which black tries to hold on to the d4 pawn. I think usually can for at least, a fair period. And basically, there's a battle fought over white's e5 pawn, which is the pawn that white is up by. So here, I think basically white ends up having to give back that pawn. But now white basically has positional advantage. There's not really a positional advantage for black. This d4 pawn is kind of a liability. It's overextended. You can play like knight b3 and threaten it. But here, white is looking pretty solid. Bishop b2, knight takes, and this pawn is hard to defend. It's awkwardly placed on d4. So yeah, let's keep looking. E3 is the second most common variation, but I think that this is worse. Let's just look at the eval. I guess it's probably it's fine. I guess E3, pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. Then it turns into some like French. Then it actually with pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. This turns into the French exchange, which is unusual, but kind of interesting about this position. Okay. So Albin counter gambit has the potential to turn into the French exchange if black or if white plays e3 and black wants to trade d4 pawns. Okay. In this position, I think white is good. White has better center control. This d4 controls a lot. Basically a very good squares. E5 for the knight, c5 for the bishop. Yeah, no problem. E3, E3 I don't think is bad. If we look at the eval, like the eval is still fine. Preferred move is pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4, and then you're just trading, basically into equality and into a position where it's the French exchange Monte Carlo variation. This is an opening that white intentionally chooses to play sometimes. So I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that opening line. It's just that pawn takes e5, d4 is generally the preferred line. Cool. So here bishop d2, pawn takes, and then white is white's basically got the initiative, center control, space. Overall, I like this for white. I think ideas include like rook to b1 maybe to rook to b5. Queen a4 is an idea, but center control is good for white. His minor pieces are better. He has the bishop pair to black's knights, and overall I think just relatively smooth sailing for white. Ideas like queen a4 are good. Maybe rook c1, c4 could be played, but in terms of it's a little tricky in the sense that I don't know if there's great targets for white to be attacking here, but I think white just sort of pushes his superior center, and can play moves like knight e5 and improve basically moves that improve his minor pieces, but do not directly attack. I think you can just make minor piece improvements until black basically has to come up with a good response. Well, h3 though I think came first though, right? In this game, unless I'm looking at a sideline. Oh, queen a4 here, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean it improves the queen. I mean, you know, this queen's not doing anything on this file, and it's not. I guess technically it's holding this bishop in case you wanted to move the knight, but a4 provides it with a lot more kind of general mobility. Threats on this knight, control over c4 is helpful, and I think yeah, queen a4 is probably just better. You know, it makes sense. It's an intuitive move, and it offers you opportunities to continue to improve your pieces. I think queen a4 and then rook d1 maybe, or rook c1. Either could be good, and either would be, you know, kind of straightforward ways to improve your pieces, your piece mobility. That's what I would go with. So it's yeah, it's a great move. It's a good move, and you know, you can basically play rook c1, rook d1, and have just a very straightforward, you know, straightforward improving game, with your pieces all being well placed. Rook takes, rook d8. This is good. It's good for white. C takes d4 is an idea, and I think here basically, you know, this is about equality, but I think here, I don't know. I mean, now you're in kind of an early end game. I want to just slow this down because it seemed to turn into an end game really fast. Makes sense. Bishop takes knight is interesting. I guess that's probably right. It does feel a little awkward going into an endgame trading off a bishop for a knight, but I guess you know, that does mangle black's pawn structure badly enough that it's probably the right. I think it's the right move. Interesting. And here, you know, you definitely have more chances than black. A7 is weak, f7 is weak. You know, you both have 3 pawn islands, but I think the doubled pawns make black's pawn structure like noticeably worse. Now I think you're drawn. These pawn structures I have to think are about the same. Ooh, okay. All right, so there's I think here you're pretty much drawn. Like this I feel like at this point this should probably be a draw for white. I think h4 is just an attention related blunder. Like that, you know, that these types of things happen, but I mean, this is just a blunder, right? I've made many in my life. Like this, I think there was not much except the idea that the rook wasn't the rook can just take it. So yeah, that's a bummer. This is a very drawn game. This should be a draw. King g2 here, I think, right? And then e3 is pretty miserable though. That's rough. But yeah, h4 I think is the decisive move of this game. I think without h4 you basically just draw it and you know, call it a day, and both sides played pretty well. Here yeah, I mean, you're basically fine. In terms of improvements for white, everything sort of made sense to me. White's playing well. C4, okay. C4 is probably too ambitious. C4, knight takes c4. Knight takes c4, and then what happens? C takes d4. This is a tactically complicated situation. C4 here, knight takes, pawn takes, and the pressure on the e3 bishop and e2 rook are pretty good for black. But yeah, trades off into a draw. So you know, I think I'm just gonna say, like, all right, so this is a draw here. let's pretend the game ends here and that it ends in a draw. This is a draw. I think you've played well enough to deserve a draw here, and this is just a small attention-related error. They happen to all of us at various points. Without that, we're in the so obviously that's an improvement. But where strategically could this game have been improved? C4 is a C4 introduces some interesting tactics. I think probably, just because how should you play the endgame at the end? Yes. I mean, unless you're really unless there's something very specific about this situation, related to trying to win this game for a tournament or some type of thing. I think you should just draw the drawn endgame. This endgame is very drawn. In fact, Black's probably got the better side of it because he has the better pawn structure, right? Although you have the you have the passed pawn, so I don't know. But yeah, I would basically just force Black to make some type of move here. I would go with rook a. So it's Black to move here, and here I would go rook to a8. So rook to a8 here, and then play if f4, then something like rook g8, rook f8, rook e8, something like that, threatening these hanging pawns. That's my advice on that topic. If you don't hang a pawn, it's going to be really difficult for Black to advance much on you. Just play rook a8 and be ready to check the king a bunch. And if you force Black to overextend, then you're going to have better winning chances than he does. But I think you just sort of play rook a8, be ready to check a bunch, and don't worry about it. Things like king g6 and then rook g8, king f7, rook a8. That should be okay. Just sit back and sort of relax on this one. This should be a draw, and if Black tries to push it too hard, he'll lose it. Just as sometimes happens in end games. If you push a drawn endgame too hard, that's a very risky situation. Anyways. I think we can go back a little bit and see these openings. The main move here is pawn takes e5, but e3 is actually fine, objectively speaking, fine. It's traded into something that looks a little like the exchange French, but isn't. And then the only thing that I really see as improvement for White is this tactical idea. I think basically after c4. Black can go into this continuation, knight takes, pawn takes, and this ends up being good for Black. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, the same thing I think can happen on the next move as well. But that tends to be that basically is a small tactical improvement that the Black could have made, or that the White could have made, not allowing Black this counterplay with knight takes. And then pawn takes d4. Other ideas, I think basically this has been pretty good, makes sense for White. I like the trade here. Maybe here, if there any way for White to avoid the draw, this endgame should be slightly better for White. White has a better pawn structure. These f7 and f6 pawns for Black are a problem. So here, I don't know. It seems pretty solid. c4 allows this tactic, but that tactic is not so great, and overall just generally trades into a pretty tough endgame for White to win. Just looks very drawish at the end. Right here, I think the best you can do is draw this. It's a very accurately played game too, but yeah, I guess I would just say here, just let it be a draw. Don't push it too hard. Let Black try to push it too hard, and if he does, then you'll get to capitalize on it. But unfortunately, you guys have both played a great game. Yeah, Black played a 98.2% game. I mean, you know, you guys are playing well. Um, in terms of errors, I think basically 90.6, but you know, all of that is based off of you know, what happens in the very end of this game after you play h4. I'm just gonna take it back and actually let's just clip this. I'm actually sort of curious. If we go to this analysis and play instead of h4, I just want to delete all the moves after h4. So let's say the game ends here, and I want to just I wonder if I can just delete this. Or you know what I'm gonna do? Here, I'll do this. I'm sort of curious about this idea. I'll end it right after h4. So I'll like play it to right here. Okay, cool. Let's load this game. I'm kind of curious about this one. So let's say it ends right here. Then what's the accuracy? Yeah, 94.8 to 96.1. Yeah, it's just a very accurate game. Yeah, I mean, basically you got dinged hard on the accuracy with that end game, but overall a very good game, good playing, and you know, I think other than, you know, some of these end game errors, you really were in a good place. Yeah, very solid. Let's see what this mistake was. Knight to e5. Yeah, it's just a well played game. What was just since now we've used the computer analysis to identify the mistake. What was so bad about knight e5? G4 was better. Okay. But yeah, I would just be pretty chill about that. There's not much to do. Yeah. Books or endgames. Books on endgames I would recommend. Basic Chess Endgames by I think it's fine. Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual is great. It's very dry. You know, I haven't gone through all of Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual, but it really is the best book. A very defining book. There's one by I think it's Nick DeFermian. But I would go with Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. That's the one that the Grandmasters all like the most, and you know, from what I've gone through on it, I think it's really pretty solid. Yeah, G4 seems risky for sure, but I think it's pretty good. But yeah, Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. That's where I would steer you towards Spared. Thank you very much for sending the game, and thank you very much for yeah, thank you very much for sending all that. Dvoretsky's the Endgame Manual, or Basic Chess Endgames. Either of those I think will be very solid. Probably Dvoretsky's better; it's more modern. But yeah, those are the resources to use if you have the discipline to go through them. Very dry stuff, very dry, very technical, but it will actually help your game a lot. So that's my recommendation on that one. All right, cool. Let's go through this. Let's go through this English for Tarash. English was looking through. Tarash was interested in looking through some English theory. I've never played the English, but I'd like to see that theory. So let's take a look. Maybe I'll learn something. So here, C4, E5, and sorry, I'll slow this down. What are the main responses to the English? The most common are knight f6, e5, e6, which is not a line I know. I do not know e6 against the English. C5, g6, or c6. Those are the most common moves against I don't. Yeah, I don't know that one, to be completely honest, Spared. I would take a look at it, but sounds interesting. Uh, I'm sure it's a good book, but that's not one of the ones that I know. The most defining endgame book I know is Zaretsky's Endgame Manual. But I'm sure if Magnus Carlsen recommends it, I think he's usually pretty on the level about those things. Um, yeah. Okay. E5 is so the most aggressive opening against the English is E5. I want to take a look at the classical English today. This is or symmetrical English. This is a very closed game, but I think it offers pretty good winning chances for Black. I think this is one of the ways that Black can play not super aggressively, but can kind of go into a winning positional attack. E5 is tactical and interesting, but I want to see what happens if Black actually tries to win in a very kind of slow, like relaxed way. G3, G6, Bishop G2, Bishop G7. Very symmetrical. It's this fianchetto ultra symmetrical line. Castles, D4, and then D5 I don't think is playable. I think this is where the symmetry ends, right? D5 is a good amount worse than C takes D4. C takes D4, Knight takes D4, and then Black has a few different choices. Knight takes D4 is one. I mean, many different choices. By the way, Knight takes Knight G4, which is weird, and I don't know that one, so maybe we'll take a look at that. Queen A5, D6, Queen B6, A6. All options for Black. So yeah, I guess I would say maybe Knight to, what happens on Knight to G4? Knight to G4, E3, D6. I'm still not seeing the reason why Knight G4 would be justified here, though, to be honest. Yeah, D6. I think I would probably play in this position. So you're choosing between a few different moves here. D6 is the most common. D5. But yeah, castles, D4, D6, pawn takes pawn, and then D6. Sure. Pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, and here's this is where we're at. This is pretty interesting. So yeah, I don't understand Knight G4 at all, to be honest. It looks like it's got a relatively good winning percentage for Black, but it seems awkward and not that justified at this point. One of the values of Knight G4 is that it allows this discovered check on this knight. So basically, the bishop and the knight are both attacking this knight on D4. You'd play D6. Yeah, D6 looks good. I don't see any problem with that, really. I think basically here, knight takes is an idea. Knight takes, B takes, bishop takes, and rook B8. Makes sense. I don't know. In terms of things for white to do, knight C2, bishop E6, B3. Cool. Looks good to, looks good for Black, I think. Basically, it's very symmetrical. White still has some opening initiative, but basically here, I like the way that the Black is playing this. Ideas like knight E8, threatening C3 and threatening indirectly A1 makes sense. But here, let's keep looking. C4, C5. And yeah, ultra symmetrical English. D4, pawn takes, knight takes. I don't know. Yeah, D6. Well, I don't think D6 is D6. I don't think D6 is on the list here though. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn. Knight G4, E3. I just want to make sure I understand the right. I want to take a look at the line you're suggesting, Spared. Is that after this one? c takes d4, knight takes d4, d6. I think in that particular case, this knight on c6 becomes undefended. Doesn't it? So knight takes c6, pawn takes c6, bishop takes c6, rook b8. I mean, I guess, you know, black gets good compensation here, right? Like this threat on b2 is pretty solid. Bishop can play to e6 and have threats on c4. That makes sense, I guess. But yeah, overall here, I think black's in pretty good. You know, black's basically in a pretty reasonable place. The white eval is not that great. Queen a5 is probably, you know, I guess the suggested move. But I've never even seen the knight g4 line, so that's interesting. Let's look at the queen a5 line. This keeps this knight fully defended. The issue with d6 is, you know, it basically gambits a pawn. It might be worth it. It might be a good threat on b2. You know, I do feel like black gets like good positional compensation for this. His pieces are better. But with rook b8, I think he's gonna have you know, it's gonna be sort of tricky to regain that sacrificed pawn. I play queen a5. This is what I like the most here. Knight b3, queen h5, e4, queen takes, and I don't know. I guess d6 maybe. d6 followed by knight to b4 and knight c2. That could be good. Maybe knight e5. Overall, interesting stuff. Hey, welcome MW. Thank you very much for being here. So yeah, so I think d6 is probably the best idea, you know, going forward in this position. Overall, pretty interesting. It seems like black hasn't quite equalized, but you know, from a, I don't know, I don't. You know, if I took this from white's perspective, I wouldn't really feel like I was winning by very much. You play d6, you get your minor pieces out, and maybe bishop e6. But yeah, overall, should be good. Nothing too frightening here in my eyes. D takes, knight takes, e5. Overall, yeah, just sort of your standard white initiative going into like the late middle game. I don't really see a great plan, to be honest. I mean, maybe you could like play like knight to b5, but it seems difficult to come. You know, white does have the initiative, but it seems difficult to come up with a complete plan that provides great chances for white. Let's go back to the game though. Yeah, or let's go back to the main line. Since we're looking at the symmetrical English. So it basically goes to move 7 completely symmetrically. d5 is not playable here, or shouldn't be, and then d takes c5. C takes d4 is the correct response. Knight takes d4, and then options between queen a5, knight g4, and d6. d6 is interesting, sacrificing the pawn on c6. It ends up being the b7 pawn gets sacrificed, but opening a file for the rook. It's just interesting. I mean, it looks like black never really fully equalized. It's just been that one move symmetrical game the whole time. Interesting. Knight to g4, bishop e3, sure. All of this looks fine. And I don't know. d6, I guess. A move earlier, if you don't play this pawn takes d4 move, you can play d6. On d6, d5 happens, and then knight a5, knight d2, a6, queen c2. And overall, you know, this looks pretty good for black. You know, b5 is going to be pushed soon. I think white should probably play a4, although that's not the preferred line. Preferred line is b3, where I would respond b5, bishop b2, and then b takes. And, you know, here I mean, I guess it's, again, you know, you're sort of looking at the same, you know, half a pawn advantage, but definitely some good opportunities to attack the, you know, to attack the queen side here as black. Black feels like he's got more control over what's going on the queen side. You know, in the center, white's better for sure, but I don't feel like black is without counter chances here. Bishop h6, f4, e5. All this is fine. And I don't know. This looks fine. White's up half a pawn. That's all good. Yeah. This somehow, this in this mainline theory, it seemed to get, the divergence seemed to get wider. It just basically ended up turning into a regular game. But this is, I think, hopefully a helpful summary of the symmetrical English. Many transpositional opportunities, many different options. So it's sort of important to stick with your, with your intuition and with your fundamental play here. This game is not super difficult to play. You can just sort of, basically play cautiously and symmetrically, and basically, you will have to find a way to recover against White's continued initiative of half a pawn or whatever. But here, d5, knight a5, knight d2, and Black's basically looking pretty good. Queen c2 maybe, rook b8, b3, b5. This is a pretty much pre-made game. Looks good, and both sides have solid chances. Just really time to play chess. I'm sure grandmasters have this memorized 20 moves in, but I think basically I would feel pretty comfortable playing this as either black or white. Symmetrical. You're sort of hoping for an error, I guess, as black against white. Otherwise, White's just going to carry his initiative through symmetry to a very late point in the game. But yeah, I like it. Nothing particularly frightening there, and I think generally black is good. It's the winner of this game will go to probably the person who can come up with the most, the best tactical idea here. Positionally, that's sort of scattered. I don't know how great. The strategic concepts are beyond just continue to advance on the queen side, but I think basically pretty good for black. The winner of the game will be the one who plays more accurately. Very interesting symmetrical English. Maybe we can go over c4 e5 next time, but I wanted to get to the English tonight, and really wanted to take a look at that. Awesome. We've got two more. We've got Coop Drake's game, and we've got Vertwich's game. Here is Coop Drake's game. He is playing white here, I believe. And we will look at this. Cool. Interesting. Interesting situation. Hey, thank you very much for the follow. Thank you very much for the follow, Lord. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're playing black here. Sorry, I sometimes get the names confused. Thank you for saying something. Thank you for saying something. Yeah, so you're playing black against the Italian game. Here, okay, so here's one of the lines that I play. I play a line here that is not correct, and I probably wouldn't advocate it. I play Queen f6 here. C3 is a tricky line for black to play against. It poses black some kind of difficult questions. Here the main line is knight f6. It goes d3, d6. But the line that I'm actually the most worried about as black, and the reason why I don't play knight f6 is d4. So the center game: c takes d4, c takes d4, bishop b4. Bishop d2, bishop takes, knight takes, and I've never really liked black's position all that much here. He played d5, pawn takes d5, knight takes, and overall, I think this is pretty much good for white. This center feels much better for white. He's I think a tempo ahead in development. And I guess this is relatively equals. But I never liked this position as black. I always just thought, the rook his rook's going to get to e1 first. He can play moves like bishop takes d5 and queen take b3 and knight to e, probably not knight to e4, maybe knight to e5. But I don't know. Maybe I should give a better look to this because it's not really rational, but I never really wanted to play this line. Um, I always play queen to f6, which is totally a junk line against c3. You play knight f6. That's the correct line. I would never. I mean, this is the correct line. I wouldn't want to talk you out of it. My queen f6 here is junky. I've won a bunch of games. One of the benefits of queen f6 is it really holds this d4 square, and also allows for very quick attacks g5 g4 on the king side as black against white. I've won I've won pretty high level games with this. Beaten 2300s out of this queen f6 line. But knight f6 is knight f6 is correct. So let's stick with the correct line. Knight g5 and castles, and black's a little bit better. Queen b3. You do need to defend the f7 pawn. Queen e7, I guess, sure, is not that inaccurate. Bishop takes f2. Yeah, okay, so this is better. Bishop takes, king takes, knight g4, and you get to take the knight on g5. I like that. Solid idea. Okay, cool. So I guess that offers a tactical improvement. But knight f6 I like. This is the correct move. Objectively the correct idea. Yeah, no, it's sort of an unusual looking move. But yeah, here, after queen to b3, bishop takes f2, and knight g4 can be played. It can't be played on the previous move. Here, knight g4 and just queen takes knight or whatever, but you did have a shot at bishop takes f2 on the previous move. Queen e7 is fine. No problems with queen e7. Overall here, I think white's attack is not really going anywhere. Threats on f7 are not going to stand, and then d6 I think is the way that you can move this forward. That's what I would go with here, and I think things are pretty much all right. Queen e7, castles, a5, b4, and I think basically black is fine. There's not really much pressure being placed on him. I think you can just sort of respond with quick development, and good things will happen for black against white here. Knight h3, I'd play bishop takes h3 probably. I would double the pawns, I think. You don't have to, but I think this is probably still good. I understand that the rook's going to align on g1, and basically your white's going to start attacking you, but I don't think you can do it quick enough to make this not worth it. This double rook pawns are really going to cause white some problems if the game continues onto an endgame. It may be a problem in the middle game too. If you play things like knight h5, knight f4, queen h4, white's basically going to get some pressure, or black's going to get some pressure on white here. So overall, I think I would play knight to h5, queen to h4 here, and just roll on. There's threats on f7. You can play knight to e6 maybe, but overall here, I like black's position. Knight to h5, queen to h4. White's going to have a lot of trouble maintaining his pawn structure. Also, the e4 pawn is hanging, so he'll have to find some way to deal with that. Probably d3. But yeah, I like black's position here a lot. Bishop e6 is probably fine, not as good as bishop takes h3. Bishop takes h3 really mangles white's pawn structure and gives you an advantage. Bishop e6 is, it's cool, it's good, you're trading off pieces, but this bishop wasn't really doing that much. So for the fact that the bishop, you're developing a piece to trade off bishops, trade off a bishop that's not extremely active. I mean, bishop e6 is played in a lot of games, and sometimes it is good to just trade off white's good squared bishop facing off against f7 for your bad squared bishop. That's usually a strategy that makes sense. I like it. But you're using a move of yours to make that decision, and that may be too much of a cost. You may want to spend that tempo doing something better. That said, the tactical bishop takes h3 is the best move of all, and leaves white with a bad kingside pawn structure. So bishop e6, bishop takes, knight there, f4, and then knight takes f4 looks playable. With knight takes f4, you end up taking the e4 pawn. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, and knight takes still. Looks good to me. So f4 I would respond to with knight takes f4, and be prepared to hit the e pawn if white plays all the way through. Knight takes, pawn takes, and the best move looks like d4 or d3. But after rook takes, this is the knight can just take and then have this this f2 threat just sitting there. Good definitely for black here. So yeah, so far in this game, I think there's two improvements that I see, and both are tactical really. Bishop takes f2 on this move. So bishop takes f2, or sorry, the next move. Bishop takes f2. Yeah, no worries. No. Don't worry about it. The thing is, I just wouldn't. Yeah, I'll just give you the same advice that I give everybody else, which is just I strongly recommend working on your tactics. I think I think basically you can advance well with some tactical study. What I say to everybody is study tactics for an hour a day on chess.com Puzzle Battle, chess.com Puzzle Rush, Chess Tempo, or CT-ART is a standalone program. All of those work. It's really just important that you put the time into tactics. If you do that, you will improve quickly. I think it provides the best return on your time below expert level, is just to do a lot of tactical study. If you talk to masters, they've all done it. Some are more straightforward about it than others, but tactical study is really a necessary part of improvement. If you know the concepts but you can't execute them, that can be a real problem. So this bishop takes f2, knight to g4, discover check is a tactic that I think would have helped black a lot in this game. Not the easiest one to see because it's sort of not thematic with what else is going on the board at the time, but could potentially be helpful. I would also definitely play bishop takes h3 here. It's sort of a bummer to trade off your bishop pair, but doubled rook pawns are next to worthless. You also can follow up by playing knight takes e4 if you want. So that is a tactical improvement as well. You can also play knight takes e4 directly, but bishop takes h3 is the best move, and these pawns become almost worthless. With knight takes e4, you're in a good place. Continuing with this, knight takes f4 was a slightly better continuation, but I don't know, not super important. And then knight b3 allows bishop to e5. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have a great attack going here. You have 3 minor pieces in your queen attacking the queen side, or attacking the king side. This is dangerous. In terms of getting this to, getting this to work, I think bishop to d4 could be good. Bishop to e5 could be good, but I think you want to keep pressing here. Bishop to e5 is a way to do it. Your eval here is going to be pretty good, I think. Bishop to d4 is evaluated as slightly better even. But you want to start. You don't want to allow knight takes f6. When a basic principle in chess is if you're attacking, you want to keep pieces on the board because pieces are useful for attacking your opponent. If you're down, or you're basically if you're getting attacked. So if you're attacking, keep on pieces. If you're getting attacked, then trade off pieces. This basically just reflects, the resources that are needed to have an attack. Any real long-term successful attack probably needs, 2 or 3 pieces in the middle game. Trading off pieces diminishes an attack if one's going on. So if you're getting attacked, trade off pieces. If you're attacking, don't trade off pieces. For that reason, playing something like Bishop D4 or Bishop E5 here, keeping all the minor pieces on the board and focused on Black's king or on White's king side, poses a conceptual improvement. Here, I think basically just Black is, Black seems to lose lose that knight. It's probably not ideal. Here, I think I would play knight to h7. Bishop e5 would also be interesting. Bishop e5 offers you some kind of mating opportunities with like queen g4, but yeah, definitely here, it's bishop e5. Let's just play through the bishop e5 line. Knight d2, rook a3, and basically pressure, basically just exert pressure on the king side. Don't trade off and spend your time exerting pressure on the king side is my advice. Don't take your pieces away from the king side while you're attacking. You might get material here, but I think conceptually all the action on the board is going on over here. You've got your knights over there, you've got your bishop over there, you've got your queen ready to come in. Just keep attacking him over here and see how that goes. I think that's a stronger, I think that's a stronger choice than to start moving resources to the queen side. Queen g4 bishop to e5, queen to g4 might be an idea. But overall here, I wouldn't spend time with this kind of queenside maneuvering. It is a file on which your rooks can get in, but definitely don't ignore the fact that this knight can take your bishop here. This bishop's going to be valuable in your attack. You want to keep it on the board. Anyways, this all looks, this basically trades off. I think hanging the knight there was a mistake. The better move here was, and then queen h5, the better move was h takes g5. I guess h takes g5 introduces the idea of like king, I don't know, king h7, but this still looks sort of sketchy to me for Black. I don't think you want to do any of this stuff, to be honest. I think you want to play like bishop e5 and maintain your attacking pieces on the king side. All these trades, basically each one of these trades hurts Black. Leave the pieces on, play like bishop e5 or bishop d4, and you're in a good place. That's my recommendation. I wouldn't sweat the specifics too much. After this queen side moving, I think there's some tactical inaccuracies there, but yeah, I would just keep the pieces on while you're attacking, and I think that'll play out well for you. Yeah, let's go through this again. No, I think that's exactly the way I would describe it. In general terms, I think basically the thing that you want to do there is basically hold on to your attack. You've built up this attack all game. Your position's about equal, and you want to not trade off pieces and not spend time on other things. Once you've launched this attack, you have your pieces facing towards the king side. Just go ahead and execute that as quickly as possible. Yeah, no, for sure. Let's take a look. H6. So in terms of improvements here, things that I would suggest doing. I think this is all fine. Here after queen b3, you have this bishop takes f2 tactic, which looks pretty good to me. It's a little tricky. Like after king f1, do you play bishop b6, or like what do you, how do you save the bishop without losing the f7 pawn? Maybe you can lose the f7 pawn because this this file would be open. So like bishop h4, knight takes f7, queen e7. I don't know, like queen knight h6 or something. But you know, you'll get a lot of pressure with this open file. This will end up working out well for you as black, even giving up the f7 pawn. But otherwise, you know, if king takes f2, then just knight king takes f2, knight g4, and then queen takes g5, and you'll be good. Otherwise, I think you're good. The next idea I have is bishop takes h3. This looks good. Knight takes e4. I think that's an improvement. I think you don't need to worry so much about this diagonal. I think if you have an opportunity to double and isolate these pawns on the rook file, you know, there's no way that these make it through the game. Like, you know, you can take these pawns off. They're very vulnerable to attack. More ideas. Yeah, you've basically moved all your. This does get sort of stuck. I don't know. Rook takes a4 is good because it gets you that material that threatens the knight. Makes sense. But I think basically, you know, things like bishop to e5 here, and you're good. But yeah, I think too much time is getting basically. You know, it sort of slips away with knight takes f6 too. It's not just that you're spending time on the queen side that you don't have. Like, you can just basically play bishop to e5 and continue to cement your attacks on this king side here. This is yeah, this is good for black. Solid. And I think basically, you know, you're if you keep the pieces on. This bishop can be very important to you, and you'll have good chances on the king side. Don't trade off, basically. If you're attacking, don't trade off. If you're getting attacked, do trade off. That's my one recommendation on this topic. Like, you know, you need pieces to attack with, and your opponent needs pieces to attack with, depending on who's attacking. So if you can trade off, if you can trade things off, then it gets harder for the attacker to complete their attack. But overall, those two tactics, and then just conceptually don't trade things. Just keep things focused on you know, keep things focused on attacking the king. You've got all your pieces over there, and they're going to be pretty powerful over there. So it sounds good. But yeah, very interesting situation, and yeah, thank you very much for sending the game. Those two tactical opportunities, and then also just the suggestion to sort of keep up the attack once you've started it, or once your pieces are over there and the king is sort of vulnerable. But overall, very good game, interesting. I think you played well. You know, you're up 3 pawns here, so things are going your way. You've done a lot of things right to get 3 pawns up, and just you know, if you keep basically attacking and close it out. But I think basically. Solid. I mean, you know, here you're up 5 pawns. I mean, that's basically a win. Just need to close it. You know, tactics I highly recommend for everyone who's expert or lower. But overall, you're doing a lot of stuff right, and I think you know, with tactical study, you would have caught both bishop takes f2 and bishop takes h3, and both of those would have helped you a lot. But yeah, thank you very much for sending the position, or sending the game. Interesting one. And thank you very much for being here, Please send more games in the future. I hope this is somewhat helpful. And thank you very much for participating in the stream. I appreciate it. All right, here's Vertwich's game. This, I think, will be the last one of the night. I'll just pull it up here. But yeah, thank you, Appreciate it. Vertwich is playing as black, and let's do this. Okay. So this is the Slav defense. Slav defense is c4, c6. Turns into the semi-Slav if e6 is added to this. But this looks like it keeps the Slav formation the whole game. It's like an exchange Slav, I guess you would call it. Yeah, Slav defense exchange variation. Okay, cool. All Awesome. Yeah, cool. Yeah, feel free, FIFA boy. It's nice to have you here. Thanks for joining the stream, even if you're busy. And then yeah, some major volatility in this game. Okay. Yeah, cool. So Vertwitch sent this in. I really want to look it over. And let's see sort of what happened. This is the Slav, the white basic. This is, I think, the best continuation for black out of the Slav. Knight c6 is preferred over bishop f5. I think they're probably both fine. They're both in the opening book. I guess, I don't know. Moving knight c6 is probably the best idea. You know, this sort of eliminates... Hey, Matt Yop, thank you for joining the stream. But yeah, so I would say knight c6 or knight f6 here. Develop your knights before the bishops, I think. Hey, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, just doing some analysis, and we're on the last game of the night. But yeah, it's good. It's going well. So yeah, knight c6, knight f6, I would recommend. Here, basically my ideas, you know, moving these knights I think is a good idea. But bishop f5 should be fine. Wait, no. Here, what happens with queen b3? How does white deal with that? Or how does black deal with that? Knight f6 and then hang the b7? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm wrong. I think you need to basically develop I would play knight f6, but I think you need to develop one of the knights. Bishop f5 makes queen b3 too strong. I was just thinking it's all vulnerability. Yeah, of course. The main way that I'm taking games in now, Matt Yop, is through Discord. But yeah, of course, yeah, you can send Lee Chess games too. But if you send them on Discord, that's probably the easiest. But yeah, it'll probably be for a few days from now, Matt. Yeah. But yeah, please send it. I'd like to see your game, and we'll definitely go over it. Yeah. So thanks, Matt Yop, and we'll play we'll play out that game at a later point if you send it. So bishop f5 I think makes queen b3 too powerful, but queen b3 isn't played anyways. e6, knight e3, and I think basically here black's in a pretty good place. You know, queen a4, knight c6. Black is all right. Yeah, of course. I mean, I would do as many as you want, Matt Yop, but 10 is definitely a start. So keep at it. Matt Yop, you know, puzzles, puzzle battle, puzzle rush, chess tempo, and CT-ART. All good options and all things that'll help you, I think, in the long term. So knight c6, castles. I think queen b6 here maybe. Yeah, this seems to hold everything together pretty efficiently. If you castle, I think you lose the c6 pawn, among other things. Or I think knight takes c6, pawn, maybe bishop takes castles, and then knight takes c6, b takes c6. Wait, something's wrong here. Yeah, castles is bad. Castles is the eval was shifting, but yeah, I think you need to play knight c6. Here, you know, basically develop this knight. This queen a4 can be really difficult to play against, and if you basically play like bishop takes c3, and then knight f6 and then castles, that's probably your best way out of white's difficulties on the queen side. So yeah, I mean, basically we're sort of, you know, I didn't realize how necessary this was, but in this this exchange variation, you need to develop your knights. Cool. Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly where you're supposed to send it, Matt Yop. And I don't know exactly when it'll be, but I'll send you the lesson that it'll be in as soon as I get a chance. But thanks, Matt Yop, and thank you for being here. But we'll take a look at it soon. Next, you know, probably a couple days. But thank you very much for sending it, Matt Yop. Appreciate it. Castles, knight takes, and then basically, you know, the bishop hangs, so the queen takes it. I don't know if black gets back into the good position here. Knight takes e3 at any point here is good. That's good. That's good, Matt Yop, for sure. Yeah, no, I think you'll see a lot of improvement if you keep at that tactical study. Here, I wonder maybe, the engine is recommending queen f4, really putting the pressure on e3. That's probably a good idea. Just exert pressure on e3. You know, well, white doesn't really have any moves that can get to your queen. This is the one that kind of plays out that pin, which is awesome. Puts a lot of pressure on e3, but in terms of improvements on this game, the first one I would say I don't think bishop f5 is correct. I think basically after the Slav, the exchange Slav, you need to play a knight move. I thought you could play the bishop out just because general development, but quick b3 moves make that super dangerous for black. Just play knight c6 or knight f6. You know, that's probably a 90% possibility here. Or so knight c3 and then knight f6, knight c6. This is like 95%. You pretty much need to move a knight. I strongly recommend moving a knight on black's fourth move. But in this game, the knight developed to f6 after, and then the knight to c6 is played in response to the queen. Cool. Knight e5 and then bishop takes c3 probably is the best. You know, this is going to get tangled is the issue. You know, with something like castles, which is pretty intuitive, knight takes and this b4 bishop hangs. You can't allow that. So with knight d5, queen b6 I think is the best move. This defends everything. But already you're under strain. And I think this strain came from not playing knight moves early enough. If you play knight moves and develop with knight moves, you don't have the same kind of quick attack from white. I mean, basically in two moves, you know, white has gone from, you know, having the queen on d1 to having the queen threatening the king indirectly through this pin, and the knight advancing on the c6 pin as well. Here, I think your move is close to forced. I think queen b6 is basically necessary to keep everything defended. I think it's the only move that keeps everything defended. So an improvement here is queen b6 over castles. Castles and knight takes c6, and this bishop hangs, unfortunately. So this basically puts black in a really difficult position. And then you get this great opportunity. You get this opportunity to attack on e3. And then I think a4 is sort of not... I mean, you're basically starting this high-pressure attack on e3, and you actually have an opportunity to continue this attack in an efficient way with queen f4. But yeah, a4 I think is just to focus on the wrong point of the board. Queen f4 is better. Knight takes, queen g3, and then, and basically white doesn't fix this issue. White could fix this with bishop e2, and then it just sort of ends, and basically white's back to being up a piece. Knight takes e3 no longer does anything. The queen can no longer get in on queen f4. Queen f4 is the winning move, versus a4. But white continues to offer opportunities to attack and progress on e3. So continuing with that leads to a win for black, which is great, and great tactics to close it out as black. So in terms of improvements, the main focus I think is tactical improvement. The main strategic improvement, opening improvement, is move your knights. Knight c6 is best. Knight f6 is book. I mean, these, move a knight, is my point. Otherwise, this queen's going to get too powerful. Queen b3 is too powerful to go against. Exchange Slav, play a knight out on the fourth move. This is a definitive explanation of why. We looked at it. Moving the bishop out here makes queen b3 too powerful. You can't let queen b3 get that powerful in this exchange Slav with the attacking file open on the king. In terms of continuing this, I think you're pretty good. Knight c6, castles, pawn takes. I think if you don't castle and you play queen b6, you're in pretty good shape. You're fine. So that's a tactical improvement. And then now you're sort of playing catch up. And I think your idea to attack e3 is great and leads to you winning. But the way to continue this now is queen to f4. A5 is just a focus on the wrong part of the board. Queen f4 puts the pressure on e3. This is dangerous for white. It's the way to continue an attack. This is just a tactical site. Really, I strongly recommend continuing your tactical studies. You'll see crazy stuff like this, and it'll really help you. I would have won this game for you a few moves sooner. Anyways, white doesn't fix it, and then pressure, tons of pressure on e3, and then black gets an awesome mate. So yeah, so overall, really good stuff, Vertwitch. Thank you very much for sending the game. Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, and yeah, I think you've got a lot of I think you've got a lot of ability to improve. I think basically, you had some really correct fundamental things. I like the pressure that you put on e3, and with tactical study, you see tactically advancing moves like queen f4, which is awesome here. Super great way to attack e3. But you see queen f4 and pressure on this king, and overall that's really good. With good tactical execution, you get the winning shot in sooner. You still got it in, but you required white to play h3. If white plays bishop e2 here, then the attack kind of diminishes because you no longer have that pin. But yeah. Thank you very much for sending the game, Vertwitch. I hope that was helpful, and thank you all very much for joining the stream and for spending the time on it. Definitely keep playing or keep sending games. I'm really enjoying the games that I'm seeing. I think you guys are all kind of moving in the correct direction. I think you're improving, and with more tactical study, I really think I think you guys will improve very quickly. This is great, and appreciate you guys spending the time. Thanks a lot. Thanks for being here, and the next stream is at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for being here. Have a good night. Thanks. Bye.